All right, we are live on a Friday night, as always, this season for sure. 8 o'clock, Fletch and Randy in the corner, getting ready for a big week 11. Big weekend. Of course, this past week, the CFP came out with its first, it was its first, not rankings, not projections. The talking heads did the projections, they did the rankings, but it is interesting nonetheless. So do some homework. Let's, like me on Facebook, like us on Facebook, and give us a hit the bells and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us as we go through this football season. Randy, how you doing on this Friday night?
Doing good.
Cool. Got a full belly?
Always.
Yeah. Okay. So, CFP came out. What was your? Did you have any thoughts or reactions, or this early? Does it really even matter?
No, honestly, I wasn't surprised by any of it. I don't think, and really, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. We got so many games that has to be played that are basically, going to determine conference champions, and we have some matchups that are going to actually, eliminate some of these teams. So, people get all worked up over that first. The first rankings that they put out, much like they do at the beginning of the season. This, honestly, this ain't really a whole lot different until things play out. But, and then here in a couple of weeks now, then it starts getting real interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great. Can't think of the word I'm looking for, but how you tied them together. It's just like the first week of the season with the preseason rankings, is how it feels with this, and
Right.
people get all in uproar. And most of it will play out itself on the field, which is good. It's a little earlier than normal for elimination games, it feels like, because there's 12 teams. You think more teams getting in, but it's also a earlier chance for some teams to be eliminated, teams that maybe would have not even been considered. So therefore, they never were eliminated because they wouldn't have been in a 4-team race. Now they're in a 12-team race, and then they're fighting for their lives. We'll take a look at the layout of the 4 power conferences. The ACC and the Big Ten both got 2 undefeateds and 2 one-loss teams. I'm not really counting the 2-loss teams and down in this thing here, because this is for the conference championships per se, not necessarily getting into the whole 12-team thing. That's a whole different ball game there. But these are the teams I'm probably feeling good about are going to be in each of the conference championships as we know them for the 4 leagues. Would you agree with that, or you think there's a team missing in one of them that could possibly sneak into the conference championship?
Well, there's, the SEC is probably the biggest one that's up for grabs with the teams that they have left. I think you have, in the Big Ten, the Buckeyes. I know they play Indiana.
Yep.
But does Indiana play Penn State?
Nope, and they don't play Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah. The interesting thing with the Big Ten, it would be shocking if Oregon loses the game because they really don't have any hard teams left, and that's no offense to anybody, and that's just the way it is. Indiana does have Michigan this week. It's at Indiana. Really don't think Indiana's going to have a problem. You never know, but more than likely they should win, and probably win like they have been by 14 or more points. Then they got a bye week, and then they got go to Columbus, and that game is going to, Penn State's kind of almost eliminated from the conference championship because they lose the tiebreaker to the Buckeyes. And if Indiana loses, then they're dropping down. They lose a tiebreaker to the Buckeyes. Oregon's sitting there. It's at Penn State. I don't think they can jump everybody to get up. Ohio State would have to lose another game and lose to Indiana. And then if they do that, Indiana's going to get in over at Penn State, so because they'll be undefeated. So it's kind of hard to see Penn State sneaking in to the conference championship. And the SEC, I thought about including the 2-loss teams because there's no undefeateds, but there's so many 1-loss teams. There's 5 of them. I just felt like it's got to be the 2 teams that get in got to be 2 from that 5, I would think. But I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Well, I mean, you got LSU in there. If they lose Saturday night, they're going to have 3 losses. I mean, 2 of them are going to be in the conference,
Yep.
and I mean a very very outside chance to get into the SEC championship game because a lot of these teams are going to be playing each other. I know you have Georgia plays. You know,
Ole
you,
Miss,
yeah, they got Ole Miss, but then they have the following week they have Tennessee.
Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna straighten things out in that mess quite a bit.
And
So
Alabama being right there with LSU tomorrow. Alabama wins. Now they kind of jump LSU, and they're in there with 2 losses behind Texas, Tennessee, A&M, and Georgia. And I think mathematically there's a way for them to be in the championship game, depending on. But they need help. There's no doubt they need help. They would
right.
probably need Georgia to beat Tennessee, Georgia, and then and then I think, did Alabama play Tennessee this year, or do have they yet to play them?
Yeah, Alabama lost to Tennessee.
That's right, they lost. So you really need Tennessee to lose, LSU hopefully to lose tomorrow, then Texas, which Alabama and Texas, did they play each other? I think they did. Did
No,
they not? No, they didn't. That was last year.
they did not. That was a
Right.
year ago.
So it's just, I guess if Georgia was to lose a game and become a 2-loss team like Alabama in the SEC, Alabama would have the tiebreaker over Georgia. So that's one thing to consider if that were to happen in the next couple of weeks. Ole Miss, which a lot of people are picking Ole Miss tomorrow. So I mean, it's nothing to. If Georgia brings their 3 picks in the first half, they may be in serious trouble trying to catch up with a team like that. So it'll be interesting. There's no doubt. A lot of good games tomorrow. We can get into them in a little bit. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up from last week at all? Anything surprises? I know it's kind of a no big deal week, it seemed like, other than Penn State. But I think most people figured you, especially at Ohio State, was going to take care of business, and they did.
Right. Yeah, I think everything went pretty much the way that we thought it would go. I don't remember any big surprises from
Florida almost shocked the world if their quarterback hadn't gone down against Georgia. That was an interesting setup there. The world's largest cocktail party, whatever they call it. So
yeah, well, I mean Georgia, and we thought Carson Beck was going to be really solid, and really he hasn't been. He's turned the ball over 11 times, like in the last 5 games.
Yeah.
Like you were saying earlier, coming up with the 2 big games they have, being Ole Miss and then Tennessee. And I'm going to say Tennessee probably is probably a bigger game than Ole Miss is going to be. But I mean, I think it's at Ole Miss, but I think they have Tennessee at home, so that certainly makes that'll make a little bit of difference. But
right.
I mean, Ole Miss has been, and quite a few teams in the SEC they've been. You don't know what to expect from one week to the next.
Right.
You look at it and you're like, oh, all the talent in the world and everything, but each one of those teams have seemed to find a way to blunder things up, as they gone through the season. And then you have, they look at the other conferences, you look at the Big Ten, and basically, Oregon, Indiana, still a big surprise with Indiana.
Oh yeah.
I'm anxious to see what's going to happen whenever they come up against Ohio State, and then the way that who they're playing, who they don't play, all that coming into play of how things are going to work out as far as conference championships. So yeah, I mean it's all going to be really interesting of how that all comes about, and the next couple of weeks is going to be, just some great games going on.
Well, absolutely. We can start right here with Michigan at IU. This is a decently good game for IU as a measuring stick. Michigan, however their season is going, they do have big talent. They're decent on defense, not as good as last year. They are down some men. Honestly, I just don't think it matters. I think IU is just absolutely on fire, rolling, playing great complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. They're clicking. They're not making huge mistakes. The first time they were ever down the whole year at any point in the game was last week. Spotted Michigan State 10 points, and they ran off 41. it would be the shocker of all shockers to a certain degree. Not from if you just take the helmets off, the helmets off, so you don't know what the teams are. It'd be a huge shocker if IU lose this game. But it would be one of the big stories, like we've seen along. If Michigan was able to go on a road and pull, if it was in the Big House, I think maybe they might get some. Even though it just seems like they haven't been playing at home much easier or much better at home. So, but IU can win this game, and I think they're going to be that coach they got. I think is for real. And only thing I wonder is how long will he stay at IU? He may stay there forever, so to speak, but. If he runs the table, wins the Big Ten or whatever, gets in the CFP, a lot of money is going to be looking at him, going, "Hey, come over here and do that to our school," But
especially the way things have gone with some of the really big programs. But who would have thought at the beginning of the season that Michigan going to Indiana was going to be a pretty big favorite, be undefeated. Michigan sitting there with 4 losses. Nobody would have thought that this matchup would be that way at this point in the season. But yet, here we are. And like you said, Indiana's find a way to put it together and make things work for them, and not making mistakes or being very disciplined. But they are going to be coming up against teams that have more talent.
Right.
So we'll kind of see how that plays out too. Whenever that pressure is put on them, are they still going to be able to perform the way that they have, for several weeks now? And the one thing about this Michigan game is it may show some of that, because Michigan, like you're saying, Michigan still does have a lot of talent. Like you said, nothing like what they had last year.
Right.
But I think they can certainly test Indiana and show us a little bit more of what we're looking at there.
Yeah, a lot of time. IU right now going into this week, they have the 109th best schedule. Their schedule is the worst one of all the top 12 teams. Who cares? In the CFP. And what you usually say about teams with bad schedules is, hey, they're taking care of business. You can only play who's in front of you, and they're winning their games, and they're winning it convincingly. Mm-hmm. We would say that about USC, Ohio State, Bama, LSU, anybody. That's IU, and that's what they're doing. They're not squeaking by. They're killing teams. I think it's a testament. You and I talk about this quite a bit. Old school football, great coaching, great development, great scheming, and I think that's what IU's got. They got really good players. They portaled out. They got a lot of good guys. But the best thing is they're buying into that coach's system, and he's just proven he's a good coach, and it shows. There's just no way you can do what he's done and be a bad coach. It's just, and then not have good coaches with you. I think it's just impossible, no matter how. Usually it would be kind of like we see in Colorado, where they had a hard time last year. They're doing a lot better this year, but they're being driven by about 3 or 4 really, really superstar guys, and the rest of them are living off that. So this is a totally different deal. I'll be honest with you. When they play Ohio State, it's going to be one I'll be nervous about it, because they're a really good team. Ohio State's going to have to play a great game and take care of business, and I hope they do, and we'll find out in a few weeks. But because they'll be coming off a bye, and we have them right before Michigan, which, like you said, who would have thought going into this last weeks of the season, IU is going to decide a heck of a lot about who goes to the Big Ten championship game. That's pretty. Nobody had that on their bingo card. That's for sure.
Right. Well, one thing, for IU to be able to compete with an Ohio State, a lot of things are going to have to go their way. They're going to have to win the turnover thing.
Yeah.
Let's face it. You look at the two teams. And Ohio State has a lot more talent than IU does. Yes, IU's got things going for them and things working and all that. But Ohio State is. This is just going to be. I think this is just going to be too much for Indiana. I think it's great to see. In Indiana and Penn State and Oregon, all of a sudden, the Big Ten getting 3 or 4 teams.
Oh yeah.
Because we've seen a 2-horse race for forever,
a couple decades.
Yeah, so it is much more exciting to see the Big Ten. When you got 3 or 4 teams that you never know what's going to happen, and you get those matchups, and it's great. It's great for the teams. It's great for the fans. Great for the conference.
Yeah.
So it is exciting to see. Somebody else coming up, somebody a little bit different. We kind of expected Oregon. We kind of expected Ohio State. We thought maybe Michigan, Penn State, we knew would be there. So Indiana is a nice surprise. But, coming in coming in against a team against Ohio State, that's going to just be a real challenge for them.
I don't disagree. It should be, on paper for sure, the biggest challenge of the season, and it's just one of those David and Goliath in a certain way. A team that doesn't have quite the talent the other team does, but they gotta, like you said, play well, play together, don't shoot yourself in the foot with turnovers, and try to take it to them, and maybe catch Ohio State when maybe they're just not clicking because something's going on. You never know. I mean, that's why I play the game, just no doubt. So, and I heard by USC, they've lost 5 straight one-possession games, and all of them they had a lead in the fourth quarter. So a lot of people thought USC was going to be a team, and after they beat LSU to open the year, it looked like, hey, they're for real, and then it just didn't quite turn out that way. So, but it makes you wonder if they can make that turn over the next couple of years. Otherwise, Lincoln Riley may not be able to sit down because the seat's going to get a little bit too hot. But
yeah, I think so.
What up? We got. I thought this was interesting because Miami U with that Cam Ward, they're rolling. They're not blowing everybody out. They got a lot of help from some refs calls and some non-calls and some late game heroics. They've been down, but now they got to go on the road and play a team that doesn't mess around too much. This team, in the early beginnings, we thought they were going to be something special because they knocked off Florida State, but then everybody knocked off Florida State, so it wasn't that great of a win.
Yeah,
but this could be a trap game to a certain degree for Cam. I want to say they're probably, if at the very best, it'll be a game that U of Miami's got to come from behind again just to be able to win. Just because that's what they've been doing all year. But they are undefeated, so they're winning them.
Yeah, and I think Georgia Tech's sitting there with 3 losses, aren't they?
I think so. Yeah, I mean,
they're sitting there with 3 losses. So, I mean, it could be a trap game, and Georgia Tech is one of those teams that seems to step up big against some of the bigger teams. So, it could be interesting. Like I said, like you said, Miami seems to just be getting by here, late in the fourth quarter and winning these games. They've been behind in several games. So,
yeah, I mean, California on the road, Virginia Tech, I think. Right. There were a couple others. We got to got a little fan action here from John Austin. Wants to know if we agree with the 12-team playoff, or is that too many? It wouldn't be better of a nail biter if there was 8 teams. Then the best thing he says is he loves the show. So that's awesome. So shout out to John.
yeah. Well, John is an absolute great guy. And I actually I agree with John on this. And originally, when we first started talking about this, I originally thought that 8 teams was kind of like the perfect number for all this thing. But they went with 12, and of course that's going to muddy the waters a little bit on for those last couple teams getting in. But originally, I truly thought that 8 teams was the way to go. You can match them up, 1, 8, 2, 7, right on through, and you get through the playoffs a lot quicker. But much like you have that bye week there,
right?
When nothing's kind of going on, you get that game in there. But originally, I thought the 8 teams would be the way to go. Yeah, I still kind of feel that way somewhat. So. I guess if John's saying that 8 teams, I would agree with him on that. So, but the 12 teams, I don't know. I just, it's going to be interesting because college football with the NIL and everything, the transfer portal and all that, teams, we have teams coming on. Some of the top teams are losing people. That they, when you always had, the top 4. Was always going to be the top 4. And we pretty much could have told you who the top 4 was almost from the beginning of the season to the end.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, now with the NIL and the transfer portal, now the other teams have a shot. So certainly, a number 12, a number 11, number 10, they certainly have a shot at a national championship.
I wondered when they decided to do the 12, because I thought they would do 8, and they just had to jump straight to the 12, almost a little too much too soon. I wondered if they were in their mind thinking about it being a Power 5, and because I believe after they did that, at some point was maybe the next year or so, was when all this stuff came over to the Big Ten, and then all of a sudden the Pac-12 was gone, and now you've only got 4 power conferences. And they were saying, you got to, all this. They had to tweak some of the language. You can't get on an automatic bid unless you have 8 teams. That you still have a Pac-12 with 2 teams in it, but they don't get an automatic bid. Washington State and Oregon State. So now you got all these teams squeezed into 4 conferences, and the bulk of them, from a power standpoint, squeezed into 2 conferences. And it's like, it's now all of a sudden, I wondered if they would have been better going to 8, because they would have had a better chance of getting all these teams they wanted. I don't know. It's just one of those things I thought of, because the first round buys, I think, are just a little weird, especially when you can be a Power 4 conference team and still have to play the first games and not get a bye if the group of 5 team, which right now is Boise State, ends up being better than you. If BYU loses a game, Boise State's probably going to jump them in the rankings, and they're going to be getting a bye week. And then here's Notre Dame with no chance at a bye because they're not in a conference, which somebody said, I was watching a thing where Notre Dame has the advantage of this. They don't have to play a conference championship game, so they have an extra week off. They're not going to get a bye week, so they get to play a home game probably if they're ever in, considering their rankings. So they get that extra week off to prepare for the home game, get a home game, and then move on. So they have a little better than the other teams that aren't getting the byes, and the bye teams obviously don't get a home game. And there's a lot of things that's weird about that. Then, of course, in a couple of years, to 26 is when the bowl games end with the contracts of the New Year's 6. And the rumor is they're going to end the bowl ties, and then that's going to change and give more home games in those middle, so that would be kind of cool. I think I'm excited about the home games. If we get, like we've talked about the last few weeks, we get LSU, we get maybe a Clemson or maybe a South Carolina or a Penn State or all these huge, Tennessee, any of them at night, crazy. That's just going to be probably the best college football we've seen in quite a long time because it's all playoffs. That's just going to be nutty, and crazy fans like so that I'm really looking forward to that. And I think that's going to really make some teams that with the buys feel like, hey, we got to buy, but we're getting gypped on a great atmosphere and a great home game and all the beer sales and all that, so.
Well, exactly. And, we've talked several times about, the home field advantage at a place. LSU, Saturday night, tomorrow night, that place is going to be absolutely crazy. And that's a huge advantage for LSU. Against Alabama. But, we see that. We've seen it at Oregon, Ohio State, we see it at Penn State. There's places that it's just really, really tough to go. So when you get that
A&M,
having that home game is a huge advantage, especially during the season, let alone the playoff. It's even, I can imagine it would even be more crazier.
Oh yeah. And I did hear that whoever gets the teams that get home games, they can pick the stadium. But so if you get some team in there and their stadium's not very big, they can say, hey, we want to have it at Lambeau Field, and they'll, obviously got to be close there, but they don't have to have it in their home stadium. They just get to choose the stadium they'll have it in. I don't know how that would ever work out necessarily. I would think for the most part they would have it at home, but I guess you never know. A team like a Vanderbilt, or maybe that's not good. More like a Northwestern right now. If they were to sneak in, they got no stadium, so they would probably have to choose somewhere to go, like Soldier Field or something. But it's just an interesting twist.
They're going to have some kind of miracle for them to get into playoffs anyway. So.
Oh yeah. If by some chance they were good this year, they would have that issue potentially. But they're not good at all. So it's just interesting dynamic for sure. So one of the 2 big games for sure. Ole Miss and Georgia. Ole Miss, I kind of look at as if they're somewhat like Penn State in the Big Ten. Not exactly the same type of team, but they're really dangerous, really good, but they just can't quite seem to get there. And as much as Lane Kiffin is who he is, I just don't know. He's not a Kirby Smart. He's not turning into a Kirby Smart, it seems like. And I just feel like they're always going to be as close as they ever have been, but not quite there. Getting to the, they may make the 12 this year if they get on a little run here, but it's hard to imagine with some of the deficiencies they have, especially on defense, of them putting it all together and running it all the way to the championship. But I know strange things have happened, especially this year with so many flaws, so many teams. But but this game Georgia could be walking into a buzzsaw because, like we've talked about, Carson Beck is just having horrible first halves, and some bad second halves. But if the defense that played Texas shows up, then the Ole Miss is in trouble.
Yeah, the one thing about Georgia always plays good defense, and we've talked before about Georgia. The other thing that Georgia does with Kirby Smart, Kirby Smart is probably, from what I've seen, is probably one of the absolute best at making adjustments as the game goes on, especially at halftime. When his team comes back out in the second half, they usually made adjustments to really help themselves, and that has a lot to do with Kirby Smart. Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, a great offensive mind. The defense has, been a little bit better, but Ole Miss and Georgia are kind of, we've kind of seen the same thing. I think that Ole Miss has had better quarterback play with Jackson Dart than Carson Beck, and that's something else that we never thought we'd be saying at this point either.
True.
Not that we didn't expect the Ole Miss quarterback not to have a good season. I think we did think he'd have a good season, but the fact that Carson Beck has turned into a turnover machine, that's what makes this game interesting. If Georgia comes out, plays their game, Carson Beck doesn't turn the ball over, I think Georgia's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But when that doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened now for the last 5 games, Ole Miss could really give them some big trouble.
Yeah, I agree. If that defense for Georgia is able to have their will with the Ole Miss offensive line, then that's just going to spell it really bad for Ole Miss, because Ole Miss is going to have to try to jump out on Georgia and get a lead. And even then, that's not safe, because we've seen what Georgia can do. Like you said, coming out of half times, they're always a different team if they need to be, and he's one of the best at it. And he's a great motivator. The guys come out and they execute, just like they did against Alabama. What a comeback that was. Even though they fell short, it was still an incredible comeback in that game. But yeah, last year I think Carson Beck they were talking about coming into this season how he was completing over 70% of his passes and how that's really unheard of. And this year it's just been a different ballgame. So I don't know if what he's not seeing or what's going on. I don't know if it's a new coordinator. I don't think they have the running game they usually have had in years past. So I don't know if that's part of it as well. But something's not clicking right, because he's just throwing it to too many guys with the wrong jersey on. So, but if they keep away from that, like you said, they should look really good against Ole Miss if he just can play a safe game, protect the ball, and maybe if they can just run it.
Right. I think Carson Beck has. You're absolutely right about the running game and stuff. But Carson Beck, I think he is forcing some things, trying to make too many things happen.
Yes.
They haven't had that running game that they've had in the past. At least a good stable running game because that running game sets up the pass. And and you have to question their call playing a little bit, because when a guy's struggling a lot like that, you got to call plays where he's throwing the ball that it is more like a running game, the short pass. Get things going. Short. But I think he's been forcing the ball. Trying to do things, trying to do too much. And also, he has had not much help from his receivers. They have had a lot of drops.
That is true, too. There's no doubt. There's no doubt. It's usually early in the game, too, which just doesn't help you stay on schedule, as they always say. Yeah. And that's somewhat demoralizing sometimes to a struggling quarterback when they're not catching it. It's like snake bit, It's amazing. As good as that defense looked against Texas, and the offense still was just really horrid in that for the most of that game. It was like it's amazing that defense was just so lights out because they were on the field so much. But boy, they just were manhandling Texas in that game. So that was impressive. That really made Texas look pedestrian to a certain degree. So and they haven't really looked the same since Ewers got hurt. So you wonder what's going on there, and how the rest of that, because they got a end of the season game against A&M, which at one point looked like these two could be in the final game, and they still could, but A&M sure took a butt. Was it last week they took a butt whooping from South Carolina?
Well, and we actually talked about that. You asked about things from last week, and that was one thing that I want to talk about, because I said that week, I said if South Carolina can get any kind of offense going, their defense is solid, and we talked about the one guy that lives in the backfield, and he did. So South Carolina, absolute dangerous team to be playing. It has been all year, and and if they could kept that offense going at all, they would be one of the top one or two teams that we'd be talking about. But
Yeah, that was honestly the
quite,
first game I watched live of them, and that quarterback was. I mean, he was doing things. I'm like, where has this guy been all year? He was making cuts like I haven't seen many. I think he's not taking anything away from what Jason or Jalen Milroe can do running. I thought that guy was a more incredible runner than Milroe is, especially because he's quick and can cut. Where Milroe, I know, has just pure speed. He's a big guy. That guy's pretty big too. And I'm like, wow, how has this team not won every game? That kind of thing, because they were just playing crazy football last week, and him and the running back, between the two of them, it was like that's all they needed for offense, it seemed like.
well, just inconsistency on offense is all it's
Right.
been. Like I said, the defense has been solid. So
Yeah.
We'll see that. That'll be another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big one, this is if you're going to watch one game this weekend, you want to watch this one because where it's at, who's playing, it's at night. And, this has been a game for games for it's quite back. I can all the way back to the BCS days and probably earlier, as far as Saban and whoever the coach was for them that followed
Les
Saban. I can't remember his
Miles.
name. There you go, Les Miles. Yeah, this was like usually a field goal festival. Nobody getting the end zone way back in those days.
Right. Yeah,
Six,
they both
nine.
played, big defense back in those days, and that's what Alabama was kind of built on that for several years. I mean,
Oh,
up
yeah.
until the last few years, actually,
Yeah.
they changed and they kind of opened up and went with a more offensive thing, and so but this game here, I'm not real happy. It's at LSU at night. They
Right.
should have made this a 3 o'clock game, but it's going to be at night. That's just the way it is. And these two teams are much like what we've talked about, that we've seen quite a bit of, with other matchups that we've already talked about. Alabama, all the talent in the world, not disciplined enough. Not that this is not the Saban team anymore, and that's
Right.
hard. That's hard for Alabama fans to accept because it's been 15 years now of pretty much rolling right along. And now you're not seeing the discipline; you're seeing the mistakes. Jalen Milroe, I don't know what's going on there. The first quarter against Georgia, he was a running back. I mean, he got that corner all the whole. That's what gave him the big lead. And
Yeah.
since then we haven't really seen that, and I don't understand why. I mean, is there something going on we don't know about? Is there an injury? Is there are you just trying to show people you can throw the ball? I mean, I really don't. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I'm going to say play calling. LSU, on the other hand, they have their quarterback. He's up and coming. He's going to be big projections for him, but he's been inconsistent also.
Yep.
So that we'll see. And LSU hasn't been very good against the run. So this will be a matchup. Who shows up? It's kind of like what we talked about. I mean, not to the extreme of like Ohio State versus Indiana, because there's not that big of a difference in the talent here. But Alabama, if they can come in, not turn the ball over, and take care of business, not have the stupid penalties, and that's what absolutely has killed them in both of their losses. And of course, you got LSU at night, crazy atmosphere, so they'll be fired up. This is probably going to be one heck of a game.
Yeah, I expect it to be. I really expect Alabama to be in it, and I think the two teams. I think it's going to go to the fourth quarter. Barring crazy fumble Rooskies on one side, if it's if somebody's really killing it in that manner of faction. But I think they need to embrace Milroe's running. They're make it part of the running, which they've done for the most part of the year. But they just seem to sometimes get caught, and they want to throw a little bit too much. Now you got some great receivers, there's no doubt, but you gotta mix things up to where the team, if the defense knows what you're doing, it's not a big help. So and I think Alabama's been a little more successful to the run this year than they have in years past, and that's not helping them much at all. So I don't know what kind of a running team LSU may or may not be. I haven't watched that much to know if they got a running game, but if they don't have a dominant running game, that could help Alabama from that standpoint and not having to shut down the run.
Right, they have the quarterback that can run. They throw the ball pretty well. They do have a little bit of a running game, but once again, it's all about matchups. the matchups with Alabama's defensive line versus LSU's offensive line and vice versa.
Right.
And we talked about the same thing with Ole Miss and Georgia. We have no idea of how that matches up, and we've talked about it several times. It's I mean, you just don't know. Does
Yep.
do they have a scheme that helps out and gives the other team problems, or is the other team just too powerful and just going to run you over? And that's they talk about the battle of the trenches, and that's where these games were won. And I think it's always going to be that way. I don't care how spread out offense that you have, it's going to come down to how you can protect and what kind of pass rush you can get. So no idea how that's going to work out until you get into it, and then it doesn't take too long to figure out how that's going to go.
Oh yeah, I saw a thing with Urban Meyer this week talking. They're talking about you get in November and basically the teams that can control the line of scrimmage win the big games in November, December. And he's right. It's where you really start punching people in the mouth. You start hitting hard, and you control the line, and that's typically who wins. There's always turnovers and other weird things, but typically, if you can't control the line of scrimmage, it might be a long day, no matter who you are. So you got to find a way to do that. And the trenches are always big in those big SEC games. There's no doubt, and LSU and Alabama is going to be no exception. There's no doubt. So that'll be. I know you're not happy about that being an LSU. There's no doubt, but what a killer win for Alabama if they win that game. On the road, that's a huge win, knocking LSU, knocking them off, so to speak, and kind of jumping them on a tiebreaker standpoint. And then who knows? If Georgia's already lost to Ole Miss because they played earlier, I think they played like a 3:30 slot in that game. I think so. If they've already played and won, or lost to Ole Miss,
well,
they got something to play for that really matters.
Well, and you're looking at a 12-team playoff right now, and if we do look at the rankings the way they are right now, Alabama's sitting at 11.
Yeah.
You beat LSU, pretty favorable from then. Moving forward for their last few games. Georgia has one of the toughest schedules in the country. Has had all year.
Yeah.
So this is a huge game for Alabama.
And Alabama winning this game, they would have three really good wins: LSU, Georgia, and I think South Carolina. But didn't they demolish South Carolina like 35-0 or something like that?
No, they demolished Missouri last week.
Maybe it was Missouri a couple of games. Did they play South Carolina? Of Alabama, have they played South Carolina?
I'm not sure.
I'm probably thinking. I'm thinking of Missouri game.
You're talking to a guy that probably can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
Biscuits and gravy. Even if you didn't, you just say that.
Yeah. So, but that's. So, anyways, that'll be real interesting how all that plays out. But for Alabama, this is an elimination game. They lose, they're out. There's no way that they're getting in the top 12. No matter what happens with those other teams, it's going to happen. They're going to have 3 losses in the conference. LSU would have 2 losses in the conference, and then the other loss. Now, I think it's an elimination game for either team, but especially for Alabama.
Yeah, I definitely think from the standpoint of the SEC championship game, it's elimination for sure, whoever loses, because they're just so much ahead of them with 1 loss in the conference. So this will be a 2nd loss for LSU, 3rd loss for Alabama. But the CFP, I don't know if that's a complete elimination yet for LSU, with the exception of, who they beat and all that. But with Alabama already having the losses they lose this one. It's really hard to say, but, you never really know until they pick them. But it's definitely, Alabama, I think, needs just to win out. It's to guarantee themselves to get in, for sure. The CFP, that is, not necessarily the SEC championship game, but they need help with that. But you never know. I mean, but it doesn't matter. As far as tomorrow night goes, those teams just going to show up and go to war, and then whatever happens, happens. They won't be thinking about CFP during that game. They'll be talking about hitting the guy in front of them.
Yeah. One of the other games, I don't know, you probably have it to pull up. Colorado game should be a heck of a game. Colorado.
Are they playing Utah or
no? They're playing.
I have the thing open right here. On purpose, I opened it up. So
Texas Tech.
Oh, that's right, Texas Tech, and it's
Texas
at
Tech.
Texas Tech. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And so I mean that's another one. That's going to be that
and
should be
Texas
a heck of a game too. What do you got? Texas Tech 6-2 versus Colorado
six. Yeah,
six and one or something like
six
something
and two for
like that.
Colorado, 6-3 for Texas Tech.
Yeah.
They both got 6 wins, so it's a bowl eligible game for sure. Yeah, Texas Tech. I think they just played. They knocked off somebody last week. I thought
They did.
um, either.
Oklahoma State.
Oh, it was Iowa State.
Iowa State. That's
They were
right. Iowa
undefeated,
State.
so
Yep.
that was a big
That's
win
right.
for them. So,
Yep.
and then, so Colorado's going on the road at Texas Tech. And Texas Tech earlier in the season, was undefeated in the Big 12. So that could be a tough out for Colorado. And a lot of teams are high on Colorado for being able to potentially get to the Big 12 championship game, but I think they can't lose any of them based on what they were, what their projections are. John Austin is back on here. Here it is. Alabama show on stream. Alabama beat South Carolina 27-25 earlier this year.
That is correct.
So
good job, John. Way to come through for us.
There you go. So that is like a third nice win because I mean South Carolina's had their issues, but they're a tough out and they're considered a good win. I don't know if they're bowl eligible or not, but I'd be shocked if they're not. I hate to say that and then have an egg on my face.
What? If I'm not mistaken, I know why John knows that. I'm pretty sure that his daughter or somebody goes to South Carolina.
Oh, no kidding. Nice.
I'm pretty sure that's the case. I'm going to guess that's why he knows all about the South Carolina thing. Maybe he can jump in there and tell us if I'm correct about that.
There you go. Yeah, I watched the beginning of that game and I saw the intro they did with the 2001 and the music and all that and the fireworks, and I was like, those fans are going nuts, and I'm like, this is another environment that's just killing it on Saturday night football, and it's I really hope. I even said here he's back on, but I put it on the Buckeye forum. I said, I love the tradition of the Buckeyes. Here we go. His daughter got her PhD at South Carolina, so you were right.
I was correct. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that I even remembered that. I am a fountain of useless information.
Well, but that's not useless information. But I know what you're saying.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Congratulations, sir. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, PhD, no doubt. I was thinking. I put on a forum. I love the tradition of the Buckeyes, the script, Ohio, and all that. I said I think they need a different intro for night games because I love what these teams are doing at A&M, South Carolina, Tennessee, Beaver Valley, LSU, where it's a huge pageantry thing getting to start the game. The lights are going crazy. They're shooting fireworks off, big music. Virginia Tech's got Sandman and all that. That's killer stuff, man. I think that's just great for the sport. Just gets everybody, get out the chili, get out the whatever, man. Just hit the recliner back and watch the game, So absolutely.
Well, all the stadiums, when they've redone all these stadiums, they put on basically a light show, laser show.
Oh, yeah.
For when they score a touchdown and when something happens. I think it was who it was. I think it was a Tennessee coach, Josh Heupel it was Les. I want to say Les Miles. Brian Kelly for LSU. Talking about the Alabama game, and maybe we'll flash the lights in their eyes and throw them off, and that kind of thing. He had a little bit of humor in his last. In his last
press conference,
press conference that he did. So, those stadiums, like you're saying, coming up with all the stuff that they come up with, and the atmosphere and all that kind of stuff, and get right back to what we talked about that huge advantage.
It's funny. I watched a little bit of Baltimore and Cincinnati last night, NFL, and it's so weird when you watch so much college football, whether it's noon, 3:30, or a night game. And then you watch the NFL, man, it's like, are they playing football? I don't hear the crowd. The place ain't going nuts. The atmosphere is so gone in NFL. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. College football, that's why I love college football. The atmosphere is just absolutely crazy. But, the NFL games end much like the college games do. Controversy.
Penalties
not called, and my gosh, I was talking with someone about that today, and it's truly getting to the point, and this is college and NFL both, where you're almost going, what's going on here?
Yeah.
There is no way that you miss those kind of things. I mean, it is so blatantly obvious, and there's no call, and it always comes down to the end of the game when it really matters. And to me, it's almost like these guys are controlling the outcome of the game.
Yeah.
And it's just, we see it every week, college, NFL, every week. I don't know. All of a sudden, I'm starting to go, what is going on here? Is it the betting thing? Is it all the money I don't know, but not just one call, two calls, three calls. Well, the one last night was that was just crazy. Shot to the head, holding, tackle the guy. I mean, I don't know how you miss this stuff, but I don't know what to say about it. But it is really starting to fans, to the teams, to the fans. It's really starting to play too big a part.
One of the worst ones I remember, and those were bad last night. It was a playoff game. I think it was the Saints and the Rams, and I think it was the Saints that were throwing an out to the receiver, and the Ram guy just drilled the receiver way before the ball was even, and it wasn't a high. I mean, and they just didn't call it. I mean, it was so ugly, pathetic. I'm thinking, and everybody, I mean, jumping out of their skin, jumping the TV. It was such a bad call. And here's the irony of it with last night with the quarterback and the hit to the head. I can remember, I would say not even 10 to 15 years ago at the most, me as a fan was like, well, that wasn't roughing the passer. That wasn't roughing the, but what are you talking about? I mean, that wasn't a late hit, but we put a dress on the guy. Now, because the rule is if you just hit him in the head for any reason or the face mask, that's a foul. Now we're like, hey, that was roughing the passer. When it's I mean, what is roughing the passer now was never roughing the passer when you and I were watching football 20 years ago.
No, we've seen the flip of the coin on that thing. Where we thought, yeah, this some of it still is ridiculous. Some of the calls, but the one I seen last night. I mean that was that was a clear shot right to the face mask.
Yeah,
and
the definition of the rule.
Yeah, so I mean, the game has kind of changed us. So like what you were saying, what we always thought, and I still kind of believe, quarterbacks get hit. That's just kind of the way it is. They changed that rule, but now we've come to expect, hey, I think, I think you were close to him, so that's a penalty. But was. I thought the one last night was pretty blatant.
Yeah, and the thing is, anytime you hit him in the helmet, it's a flag. That's not a judgment call. That can totally be reviewed. Look at the oh yeah, you hit him in the head, flag. But say that they don't review that. That should be reviewable because it's not a judgment call. Other things can be judgment calls, but that's not. There's no judgment. It is if you hit him in the head or the face mask, that's it. There's and that'd be forcible, and that'd be blood, nothing. Hit him in the head, it's a flag. So that should have been reviewable, in my opinion. So it's just ridiculous how they're doing it. And like you said, there's sometimes the refs are in bad positions of the guy was looking right at it, so it's another one was looking at the guy tackling the tight end. It's like, what are you looking at? So yeah.
I mean, and these are NFL guys, these guys,
full timers.
Yeah, absolutely. So man, I've just several times, and it's been in the college game or two where I'm just going, come on, man, we've seen a great game last night, an absolute great game. College games, we've seen great games come down to, a call or no call, and it's like either take it out and let them play, or like you were saying, the obvious stuff. I mean, heck, it's on a big old jumbotron up there. That's one of the places was going crazy. Everybody in the world can see it. You can't tell me the ref can't look up there and go, "Oh man, look at it! He just smacked him right in the head."
Right.
I don't know.
I think they did when Georgia played Texas.
Well,
they came back from a commercial. Oh, sorry.
Well, you do what they did in college. You throw a bunch of stuff on the field, make them stop the game, and make them get back together and realize, no, we screwed that up. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
no doubt. So favors.
I hate to see it. I really do. I hate to see it.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, man. We'll wrap this one up. Big games tomorrow, so get in bed, get an early start, and you can watch Buckeyes. They play at noon. By 1 o'clock, that game should be over. They're playing Purdue. I
Yeah,
probably just jinxed them, but
Purdue is having a rough year.
yeah,
Ohio State should not have any problem there at all.
yeah, they should be playing
you know,
backups in the second half.
Yeah,
So
the biggest games are Georgia and Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU. That's what tomorrow's all about.
oh yeah, and any of the other teams like a Colorado or Miami U that might be in a fight. If Georgia Tech's jumping on them, if Colorado's Texas Tech's got them, those become really good games to go watch just because they got big time implications for those teams moving on. So, or at least winning their conference championship. So,
you know it.
Yeah. All right, guys. Enjoyed it this week. Thanks to John Austin for chiming in. We hope you stick with us and give us a like and all that cool stuff. Share it, get the word out, and we'll see you next Friday right here about 8 o'clock. So enjoy all the games tomorrow.